Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Maglita, and welcome to this Ziff Davis Enterprise e-seminar, Plan for the Best, Prepare for the Worst, sponsored by Novell. If this is your first e-seminar, welcome, and if you've been with us before, welcome back. Well, the message today is pretty simple, and it's you got to be ready for anything. Specifically, if you're in an enterprise, you need to look at end-to-end continuity solutions for all your systems, from the core mission-critical workloads to all those file and print servers out at the edge of the network. And in the next hour, we'll talk about how to do that. Specifically, we'll hear some latest state-of-the-market research and comments from IDC for business continuity solutions. We'll look at some of the advantages of using SUSE Enterprise Linux High Availability Extension to create a reliable, risk-free platform for all these kinds of mission-critical, physical, and virtual workloads. And we'll also talk at the product level about how Novell's SUSE Linux Enterprise Server and Platespin Protect can provide a flexible, affordable, low-risk disaster recovery program for everything in your organization. We'll also handle your questions and your issues, so we'll get in as many questions as we can. You'll leave with an overall better idea about how you can lower risk and boost business continuity from the center to the edge of your enterprise and find a solution that will fit every part of your business. Not a bad hour's work. We'll meet our guests in a moment. First, some quick housekeeping. This webcast, like all of ours, is interactive, and one of the things that makes it interactive is your question. So at any time during the course of the cast, use the Ask a Question feature located on your console. We'll get as many of these questions to our guests as possible during the live Q&A session at the end of the presentations. If we don't, for some reason, get to your question, we'll make sure that you get a prompt email response from one or more of the appropriate guests. So ask away at any time. Don't necessarily wait for the end. Secondly, we're going to do a couple of interactive polling questions during the course of the cast. It's a good way to get a reality check about what your colleagues are doing, and the results are always interesting. To participate in those, you'll need to disable your pop-up blockers or temporarily disable it by holding down your control key. Third, you'll find that there's lots of good information and background materials in the presentation, so you can use the Download Slides button on your interface to download a PDF copy of the presentations today. Good stuff there, worth spending some time for yourself and with your team members. And we'll list some other resources at the end when we get to that as well. And finally, when the webcast is complete, the obligatory quality survey window, you get a little pop-up on your screen, and we'll ask you what you thought about the event and if you thought it met your needs and if it met the kind of high-quality webcasts that you have come to expect from us. Okay, that's the housekeeping. Let's meet our guests. We're going to start off today, and I'll introduce all three of them to you, and then we'll hand it over. Gene Bosman will kick it off. Gene is the Research Vice President for Enterprise Servers in for IDC, the respected research firm. She's going to talk about high availability and discovery for Linux workloads and share with you some recent IDC research and some observations. So welcome, Jane. Doug Jarvis is Product Marketing Manager for Enterprise Linux Servers at Novell, and he's going to briefly take you through a high-level look at the high availability and disaster recovery solutions from Novell. So Doug, welcome here. And the cleanup batter will be Jason Day. Jason is Product Marketing Manager at Novell, and he's going to talk about beyond backup with virtualization. And I'll take you into this very interesting Platespin offering from Novell and some others. So welcome, everybody. Lots to get to, so I'm going to turn it over to Gene Bosman from IDC.
Well,
take it away.
Thanks, Joe. Let's start by taking a look at the changing landscape for server platforms in the data center. Now, this first slide shows the IDC server market data through 2010 and also a forecast, 2010 to 2013. And overall, we can see that there's a heterogeneous mix of platforms in customer environments. As we see in this chart, the amount of revenue in the different categories is shifting over time, reading from left to right, with an increasing amount of share by hardware-based revenue going to blades into the general category of x86 servers. If you put those two categories together, it combines to be more than 60% of revenue share when you get out to 2013. By contrast, it's more than 50% today. Modular computing in the data center, a trend we've seen in recent years, brings more blades with their unified management capabilities and also rack-optimized servers into the data center, and Linux is widely deployed on both of these types of servers. Now, virtualization technology, workload consolidation, and support for cloud computing, all of these are playing strong roles in a wave of change that's going through the data center, and we'll talk more about that as we go through the presentation. It's important to note that Unix servers based on RISC or Itanium or x86 will continue to play an important role in the data center, but the revenue share for Unix, as we can see here, has been declining in recent years due to high deployments of x86 infrastructure and also price pressure for scalable Unix server systems, which has reduced the actual revenue in the last year, in 2009. The rest of the types of servers are shown as other, in that blue line above. But overall, one takeaway is that there must be sweet spots in the market for each type of server platform shown. Customer preferences, IT skill sets, and application deployments vary among IT sites, which in turn leads to purchase decisions, and that's why many sites have multiple types of platforms deployed. And all of this change in the data center means that IT organizations should take inventory of their platforms and workload mix, and then map, what we call MAP, M-A-P, their HA and DR solutions according to the workload type, IT skill sets, size of business, type of business, and overall IT budget. Next slide, please. So with respect to Linux, what are the top drivers for Linux adoption? Well, as we mentioned, there is some amount of Unix migration is taking place, as IDC data has shown, particularly in 2009 when mid-range and high-end deployments were affected by the economic downturn. As well, Linux platforms support similar applications and programming management approaches similar to that of Unix, and so supporting those kind of workloads somewhat comes naturally to Linux administrators and programmers. Also, many Linux server platforms are sold at lower price points than traditional data center servers, and the presence of open source software reduces the licensing costs for software running on Linux platforms. We'll see more about that in a future slide. Virtualization and its adoption often involves Linux and Linux VMs running on x86 servers, and often is part of a larger project that involves virtualization consolidation. So again, this rising adoption of virtualization really has resulted in actually a number of mixed environments with multiple operating systems running on shared server platforms. Now, a few years ago, the average number of VMs per physical server was about 2 to 4 VMs, but now IDC's virtualization research shows that the average is more like 6 to 8 VMs per physical server, and it's rising. And in sites that have been deploying virtualization for many years, we see 10, 20, or more VMs per physical server, depending on workload. So again, Linux is widely adopted in the virtualized server infrastructure. And it's important to note that these virtualized environments, with their software stacks that can be provisioned on demand, can also host cloud computing, and we'll be talking about that as well. Next slide, please. Now, this chart shows the growth of Linux and open source and the open source software ecosystem over time, starting in 2007 and continuing through the forecast through 2010 to 2014. As we can see, the growth has been rapid across the categories of hardware and software. And while the 5-year compound annual growth rate for hardware is less than 5%, the CAGR for the software growth is more than 20%, showing quite rapid growth. Specifically, the chart shows the revenue for system infrastructure software, operating system distributions, application development and deployment, application software, and Linux server hardware, and the legend on the right will show what each part of those bars is, but you can see the arrow is up and to the right as far as that goes. What this chart does not show is the associated services revenue, which would have made the bars in the chart even higher. It also does not show revenue for PCs or revenue for open source software that's running on non-Linux operating systems. Next slide, please. So this next slide is based on IDC's annual workloads research, which focuses on the types of workloads that are running in the customer data center by platform and operating system type. Now, IDC has categorized 7 big workload categories and then one for all the other workloads. And just to give you an idea, you can see again in the legend on the right, reading from the bottom, we see business processing such as online transaction processing, ERP, CRM, and the like. We see decision support such as analysis of corporate data. We see application development, collaborative workloads, which is email and groupware, IT infrastructure, which is including file print and support for networking protocols, web infrastructure, such as web serving proxy or cache, and industrial R&D, which includes technical computing, and high-performance computing. Now, here are the key takeaways from this slide. We can see, once again, that there's heterogeneity in the data center and that the workload mix for each platform is a little bit different by operating system type. Now, this chart is showing the percent of shipments in each category by workload type. It's kind of showing profiles, if you will. We see that Linux is playing multiple roles, both for infrastructure, IT and web, collaborative, and increasingly for business processing. And we would expect that over time, the profile for Linux would more closely come to resemble that for Unix, given a greater amount of business processing workloads that will come about towards the end of the forecast period. Next slide, please. So with respect to availability, what are the key drivers for availability on Linux platforms? Well, as we've seen, there are large numbers of scale-out servers in the infrastructure, which means that outages, whether they're caused by networking problems, power problems, hardware components going offline, all of those things, or even human error, all those things must be addressed from time to time. Now, we're including both planned and unplanned downtime. So planned downtime would be taking a system offline for maintenance and software repairs and updates. Unplanned downtime is when there are these outages that we just talked about. Now, in addition to that, we see this increasing density of VMs per physical server. That's causing more of a focus on the effect on end users. So more end users would be affected if one Linux server, a physical server, were to go offline. And that effect would be greater now than it would have been a couple of years ago. We've also seen increased ISV support for enterprise workloads on Linux, and so that's causing more important workloads to come on Linux platforms. And something that we really have to talk about here is that user expectations about access to those applications are increasing, driven by platform migration, by a new generation of multi-core, multi-processor server platforms in the data center, and all of that. But as we know, there is no one way to achieve high availability. Instead, IDC sees a spectrum of high availability solutions, which includes clustering, failover, workload balancing, VM restart, and data replication. We'll hear more about that in this presentation. Customers need a range of choices for high availability depending on their workload type, SLAs or licensing agreements, and the type and size of business. So all those things are different. And again, they need to take stock, have an inventory of which workloads are running where, and what their HA requirements really are. Given the variation in IT staffing, and this is an important point, ease of use, including having an easy-to-use interface, the ability to work with other types of software components, will cause each customer's choice of HA and DR solutions to be a little bit different, but the ease of use is there because we have new people coming into the system administration's world, and not all of them have those same skill sets. So IDC expects to see more embedding of functions and more automation in the HA products of the future. Next slide, please. So now we're going to look at some data from IDC's High Availability in a Virtualized World study from last year, 2009. Now, these bars clearly show that customers, and by the way, there were more than 300 customers or respondents worldwide in the study, including those from the Americas, Europe, and Asia Pacific, that all of these customers were deploying a variety of technologies to achieve HA with respect to, in this case, unplanned downtime for their systems. And again, we see the spectrum of products you can see on the right through the legend. We're seeing clustering, failover software, workload balancing software, data replication, tape backup, and even some use of fault-tolerant hardware as well. So all of this is because the enterprise has so many different workloads running in it and so many different needs for high availability. Next slide, please. Now, for planned downtime, the approach to HA varied, and please notice the green bar on the left side of this chart. It shows the use of VM migration for planned downtime, and this is a new, relatively new, use case scenario, and in fact, it's catching on in a big way. In virtualized environments, 50% of respondents said they were looking at VM migration, and more than 50% said they were looking at data replication as top solutions for planned downtime, which is basically maintenance and software upgrade periods of time. Clearly, IT respondents in virtualized environments see VM migration as something that's going to be increasingly important in coming years. The data also shows that the management component of clustering failover software was very useful for purposes of planned downtime, as was workload balancing. Respondents said the clustering of failover was most important for virtualized and non-virtualized servers, in fact, that both would need to be done. And many had said that they found cost savings associated with the ability to fail over from physical servers to virtual servers. What that does is it supports active deployments so that you don't have to have standby servers that are standing by waiting for something to happen. You can actually have useful workloads on both sides of a failover scenario. Next slide, please. So looking forward, respondents for this HA in a virtualized world study said they expected to use a variety of approaches to ensure HA in their virtualized infrastructure. Respondents were clear that the key forces for that were the larger number of VMs per physical server and also the important enterprise applications. Importantly, the nature of the applications being supported is itself changing as more and more workload types are seen as mission critical, even including email, so that outages in email become more critical for business results, for example. So again, this presence of more enterprise applications in virtualized environment is making HA even more pressing priority than before. By the way, we've included some data here for RISC and Itanium servers so you can see the contrast as well. And as we've said, most customers have multiple types of platforms deployed in their data center. Next slide, please. So having more HA options, including them as part of a disaster recovery planning, is how many businesses plan for business continuity. And today, business services run across computing tiers, the web tier, the app tier, and the database tier, and many of them run on Linux platforms. Customers have more choices about how to restore their applications, and again, they can be restored through physical server restart or moving VMs or cloning VMs, different approaches. Once the application is back online, then reestablishing access to shared data or to replicated data completes the recovery process. And with both the application and the data restored, business can resume as it was before an outage. All these capabilities, all of these options are supported by having a comprehensive HADR plan for the company. And finally, as workloads begin to run on the cloud, whether public clouds from service providers or private clouds within the enterprise, both of those cloud scenarios will need to ensure that business services remain accessible and available to end users and end customers. Next slide, please. So we have two slides about cloud computing, and very briefly then, the first is a chart showing both the business benefits and the challenges of cloud computing. As we can see, the benefits are there actually in yellow. They're shown. It's a pay only for what you use scenario, an on-demand scenario, not needing to build out your data center with more hardware than you really require, and so on. Those are all the good things about cloud computing. But there were concerns, as you can see at the top of the slide, having to do with security and availability, usually topping the charts on these kinds of slides. So that is a concern, and those must be addressed. Those concerns must be addressed, often behind the scenes by the cloud service providers or by the enterprise IT. This careful consideration of how to provide for HA must be baked into the cloud technologies providing that service. Next slide, please. So where are we in cloud adoption? Well, looking forward, cloud computing will be much more widely adopted. That's IDC's view, and it will support a wider range of workloads than we see today. This chart shows that IT managers are in the middle of a multi-year process of evaluation and deployment, and that, as you can see in this yellow slice of the pie, 20% say they already are using cloud computing, and more than 50% are either evaluating, planning to adopt, or educating themselves on how to use cloud computing, with only a smaller amount saying that they had no interest or plans in cloud. And you can see in that box in the upper right, the amount that will be spent on cloud computing is expected to grow from 14% today to more than 20% by 2013. Next slide, please. So here are some things to watch for. What's the future outlook? Well, as we've discussed in some detail, Linux servers are important platforms for computing in business today. They're used by large and small businesses, and they host a wide range of workloads. Whether we're speaking about virtualized or non-virtualized Linux servers, more enterprise apps are coming into the Linux space. Because many of these applications are mission-critical or business-critical, that means that ensuring uptime is a high priority for IT and for the business. There are a wide range of options for HA and DR, including new approaches to ensure business continuity, such as failover from physical servers to virtual servers is one example. And in addition, the cloud build-out will likely further expand HADR options for end users and will require more HA assurances from the providers of cloud infrastructure, again, whether it's a telco or hosting company, as a cloud service provider for public clouds, or whether it's an IT organization providing support in a private cloud running inside the firewall. So in summary, both next-gen data centers and clouds will see important apps coming to Linux platforms, and they must be protected. Back to you, Joe.
Gene, thank you very much. That's a lot of good information in 15 minutes or so. Thank you. We push people hard here because we want to make sure that we get the most of our time and give you the most of your time. And, Gene, lots of good stuff that we'll come back to. Lots of good questions have already come in. I've got a couple, and we'll get to those at the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Let's take a second between presentations. We're going to get Doug Jarvis from Novell on in a second, but let's do the first of a couple of polls that we're going to do. And as I mentioned, these are a great way to get a reality check about what the other kids are doing and where you are compared to where they are. So if you've disabled your pop-up blocker or temporarily with Control X, you'll see the poll question. Do you have a business continuity solution today? And the answers are, I have a solution and I'm not looking to make a change. I have a solution and I'm looking at new alternatives. I do not have a solution and I'm looking to add one. And I do not have a solution but do not see the need to add one now. So let's see what your level of interest and confidence is right now. So take a second, chuck in one of those, submit your answer, and we will pop up the results in just a second or so. Just a reminder, thanks to everybody who has sent in a question so far. Reminder, we've got some time set aside at the end to answer your questions. You've got experts here who would love to chat with you, so don't be shy. Use the Ask a Question feature on the console right there. You see it? There it is. And you can also download the presentations at any time during the course of the cast today, too. You don't need to wait until the end to do that. So I think probably the computational elves have cranked through these results. They will pop up on your screen in a second. And we'll see what you all are up to. You have a business continuity solution today. So just a little over 6% are feeling pretty good. I have a solution. I'm not looking to make a change. Have a solution, but looking at new alternatives, more than half of you. So good open-mindedness there. Don't have one, but I'm looking to add one, about 30%. And I don't have one, but don't see the need to add one right now, about 13%. Gene Bosman, you talked to a lot of people around this. Is this pretty typical skewing? And what are those 12.9% people thinking?
Well, I don't know if I could answer the last part, but on the first part, I think it does show that there's an increased awareness and even concern in some cases. We have compliance and regulation that a lot of IT organizations have to support. There's a lot of due diligence, and part of that is making sure that services remain online and accessible, particularly when you look at areas that have any financial aspects or health aspects. I mean, those things really have more regulations around them than even other areas. And then in general, you want your users to be online and productive. It affects user productivity, employee productivity, and so on. And, of course, downtime would be very negative. And in fact, revenue and so on. We do see a great awareness, and when we did that survey, it wasn't hard to find people who had a lot to say about high availability.
Mm-hmm. Kidding aside, too, if you are in that group of 12.9%, send in a comment. I'd be interested why you might not see it as a priority. I don't want to make too much light of it.
Yeah, the only thing I can think there, Joe, is that they may feel that things are okay now, and that often happens. And then sometimes if there is a problem later on, they may reconsider. Yep,
that's often how it goes. So thank you. Gene's given us a good sense of market and technology trends. Let's move on to the kind of what do you do about this part of it, and specifically what does Novell think about this. I want to bring on Doug Jarvis, who's Product Marketing Manager for Enterprise Linux Servers, and he'll talk at a fairly high level about Novell's high availability and disaster recovery story. So Doug, welcome.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you very much, Gene, for your insights on the market. As Gene noted, not all Linux workloads have the same level of criticality to the business. Mission-critical workloads need to be available on a continuous basis, while edge-of-network workloads can experience some downtime. Therefore, the solutions you choose and the investment you make to protect each workload should reflect its importance, and one solution may not fit for each workload. You don't need a jackhammer for a nail when a simple hammer will do the trick. Novell helps you by offering solutions with the functionality and capabilities that is appropriate for all of your Linux workloads. Our SUSE Linux Enterprise High Availability extension enables you to build physical and virtual clusters for your mission-critical workloads, while Platespin Protect provides disaster recovery solutions by leveraging virtual infrastructures for other Linux workloads in your data center. Now, as Gene noted again, the shift from more mission-critical workloads moving to Linux running on commodity hardware demands solutions to ensure that you don't experience any unplanned downtime. SUSE Linux Enterprise High Availability Extension leverages the time-proven methods of clustering and data replication, offering support for 30 true nodes to increase availability through hardware and software redundancy. As the slide notes, the High Availability Extension is optimized to work with SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, a highly reliable and secure server operating system built to power physical, virtual, and cloud mission-critical workloads. The tight integration between the products ensures customers have a robust, secure, and up-to-date high-availability solution. Now, let's talk about some of the benefits and the value proposition that's associated with the SUSE Linux Enterprise High Availability Extension. As you're all aware, service outages and interruptions to your business processes can negatively impact productivity, revenue, customer relationships, and in the most extreme cases, have legal consequences. Using SUSE Linux Enterprise High Availability Extension, you can ensure that your mission-critical applications continue to deliver business value 24 hours a day, each and every day. The High Availability Extension also helps you cost-effectively meet your SLAs. It provides all of the essential monitoring, messaging, and cluster resource management functionality of proprietary third-party solutions, but at a much more affordable price. Additionally, you can protect your data assets, minimizing data losses due to corruption or failure. SUSE Linux Enterprise High Availability Extension delivers continuous, real-time replication of data, ensuring that multiple copies of data are available at all times. And built-in locking mechanisms ensure that only one application can access shared storage at a time, ensuring your data's integrity. Finally, the High Availability Extension is optimized to work with SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, like I mentioned before, and it's based on an innovative, highly flexible policy engine that supports a wide range of clustering scenarios. Its support for virtual environments as well gives enterprises unprecedented flexibility to create highly available services with tightly utilized physical resources. In addition, commenting on also what Gene commented on, given the making it easy to implement and deploy high availability solutions, the SUSE Linux Enterprise High Availability Extension provides an easy and integrated automated deployment and makes it easy to get up and running and deploy your clustering solutions. Now, the following slide summarizes the key features of our high availability extension. Our open source solution provides parity with or exceeds the capabilities of other clustering solutions in the market. The product is based on OpenAIS, the leading standards-based communication protocol for server and storage clustering, and Pacemaker, a new highly scalable cluster resource manager with a flexible policy engine that supports end-node clusters. Using Pacemaker, you can continuously monitor the health of your resources, manage dependencies, and automatically stop and start your services based on highly configurable rules and policies. The product also includes OCSF2, a POSIX-compliant generic cluster file system, and CLVM2, a cluster logical manager. While these features I've mentioned so far are necessary for clustering software, we go one step further by by enabling continuous data replication with DRBD. Additionally, we provide unified command line interface and GUI for administrators to set up, configure, and monitor and manage their clustered environment in an easy-to-use interface. Also included in this solution are resource agents for many popular third-party and open-source applications at no additional charge. Finally, the product supports multiple clustering scenarios, including hybrid physical and virtual clusters. The combination of SUSE Linux Enterprise Server with integrated Xen and SUSE Linux Enterprise High Availability Extension with support for virtualized environments gives customers unprecedented flexibility to improve service availability and simultaneously improve resource utilization. With the launch of Service Pack 1 in June of this year, we have expanded the capabilities of the High Availability Extension. It now supports metro area clusters up to 20 miles, and for those of you guys that use the metric system, 30 kilometers, mitigating the risk of a single-point disaster. Also, we now offer storage-based quorum coverage to provide protection against split brain and further ensure your data's integrity. The cluster test drive allows you to try out cluster configuration changes in a mock environment before implementing these changes in production. We have also added additional resource agents at no additional charge, and have also included support for clustered Samba, making it highly available and scalable using multiple nodes. Now, let's try and bring this to life for you guys with how our customers are using the SUSE Linux Enterprise High Availability Extension in actual practice. With responsibility for one of the busiest airspaces in the world, DFS provides air traffic control for all of Germany and also provides other air navigation services. As you might imagine, system availability is vital to the safe handling of air traffic, and so to that end, DFS has implemented a failover solution by running their mission-critical SLES workloads in a SUSE Linux Enterprise High Availability Extension clustered environment. Additionally, La Curaçao is a growing chain of electronics and appliance stores in the Southwest. The company's previous database implementation did not have the robust clustering support that it needed, and therefore suffered regular performance and memory issues. They switched to SUSE Linux Enterprise Server and implemented SUSE Linux Enterprise High Availability Extension, providing clustered support for this mission-critical database. Since implementing the multi-node solution, La Curaçao stores have been humming without any interruption during the holiday season when the business increases by over 500%. With that, I'll turn it back over to Joe.
Yes, you will. Thank you very much. Great overview of products and some good real-life examples there. Before we get on to our third piece with Jason Day from Novell, let's do the second of our polls. So same drill as before. We'll pop it up on your screen. If you'd like to participate, block your pop-up blocker, and we'll compute and give you the results. How far are you in the evaluation process for high availability solutions, disaster recovery solutions? We've got an extra solutions in there. So basically, where are you in the process? You're researching different alternatives, considering a few select solutions, close to deciding on a solution, or not currently evaluating a solution. So kind of what is your state of readiness here? Take a second, submit your answer. We did get a couple of comments in from folks in response to my question about why wouldn't you be interested in this for your business, and a couple of folks wrote in and said, I'm a student. So they have I'm learning about this, but I have no operational responsibilities now. That is a good, that actually bodes well for the future, that they're already starting to tune into this a little bit. So anybody else would like to share why they're not interested in this kind of approach, let us know, but I think that's a valid out. So again, we'll pop up the results here in just a moment. And again, we've gotten several good questions here. If you'd like to send in others for Jean Bosman from IDC about market trends or anything you've seen in her presentation, or specifically about the Novell solution, this is a great time to do it. So the results are, how far are you in the evaluation process? Researching other alternatives, just about half of you. About 21% looking at a few select solutions. 7% close to deciding, and I missed the last one there. So that's most everybody. So let's get on to Jason Day. Jason is Product Marketing Manager at Novell, and he's going to talk to us about the whole virtualization piece of this, specifically beyond backup with virtualization. So, Jason, welcome.
Thanks, Joe. And thank you again to my colleagues Doug and Gene for their great presentations. And as Joe mentioned, my segment here over the next few minutes will be about moving beyond backup technologies with virtualization. Universally, one of the biggest challenges that we see with disaster recovery once you move past those 5 nines type of mission-critical servers is antiquated backup technologies, primarily solutions such as tape backup and disk-based imaging. The reality is, as business needs and business requirements of IT have increased over the years, the performance when it comes to recovery time objectives, or RTO, yielded with these old legacy backup technologies simply are inadequate. Here at Novell, we believe that really one of the most powerful enabling technologies allowing us to move beyond backup today is virtualization. By leveraging virtualization as part of a backup solution or backup strategy, really there's 4 key fundamental aspects to think about. First is the ability to leverage the power of virtualization to simply simplify and streamline the amount of hardware resources required for your backup infrastructure. With virtualization, a user can back up or protect multiple physical servers by leveraging only one or many fewer virtual host servers, allowing a full protection capability with a much lower footprint for hardware needs. Virtualization also eliminates a lot of the complexity associated with bare metal restores. Perhaps the biggest challenge of traditional backup is the idea of bare metal restore, or rather the process required to go from a backup archive back to an up-and-running workload or application. Oftentimes, to restore a workload after a disaster has hit involves many, many steps that can be convoluted and very error-prone, steps such as procuring or provisioning new hardware, perhaps installing new operating system instances as well as applications before you can even get to touching the backup data that would be residing on those applications to be useful. So by leveraging virtualization and some of the hardware agnostic properties of virtual machines, a lot of that complexity can in fact be eliminated from the backup and restore process. Physical to virtual technology is an interesting technology that allows, again, customers to leverage virtualization not only as a backup platform, a backup technology for virtual machines themselves, but also leverage that flexible technology to back up or protect physical servers as well as virtual machines. And finally, virtualization has some inherent capabilities, again, primarily around the hardware agnostic or platform agnostic properties of virtual machines to simplify testing as well. One of my colleagues here in the office often describes disaster recovery testing as a 48-hour Jolt Cola-fueled marathon of overtime. And that's really one of the antiquated or old pains of disaster recovery that we're seeking to eliminate or make a thing of the past with virtualization as well as technologies from Novell. Here at Novell, the solution that we've come up with to leverage virtualization as a flexible backup mechanism is a solution that we call consolidated recovery. In short, consolidated recovery is a way to leverage virtual infrastructure as well as proprietary technology from Novell for the protection of not only physical servers but virtual machine server workloads as well. The solution involves replicating workloads, again, whether they're physical or virtual, into an offline virtual machine backup copy. Once that backup virtual machine is created, we use our own replication technology to replicate into that virtual machine archive to maintain an up-to-date state of that virtual machine. Again, by leveraging virtual machine and we allow users a very streamlined failover process that simply is one click. Once a server has gone down or a server has been identified as failed, a user simply needs to identify the virtual machine equivalent of that server and simply fail over or power on in place that virtual machine copy. Virtualization also allows a simple one-click test restore capability as well. Again, leveraging the flexibility of virtual machines to be able to simply identify the single or multiple virtual machine backups that a user would like to test and simply powering them on in place. And finally, The consolidated recovery solution includes a very flexible fail-back mechanism, leveraging an interesting anywhere-to-anywhere workload migration technology from Novell, allowing users to fail back or stream those virtual machine backups back out into any physical or virtual net new hardware infrastructure once the disaster has passed. So in short, multiple benefits of consolidated recovery, and using this approach of leveraging virtual infrastructure for disaster recovery allows you to dramatically reduce the total cost of ownership of your disaster recovery infrastructure, while at the same time dramatically increasing the RTO, or recovery time objectives, that you can see when it comes to actually having to restore from those backups. Again, we simplify testing with bootable virtual machine backup archives. And finally, at the end of the day, we believe that consolidated recovery and virtual infrastructure is a way to finally complete your overall disaster recovery architecture for all of your server workloads. The product from Novell that we bring to market, allowing you to deploy consolidated recovery, is a product that we call PlateSpin Protect. PlateSpin Protect is a powerful software solution enabling whole workload protection, allowing users to back up not only physical but virtual machine servers into flexible offline virtual machine backup archives. We leverage, again, our own proprietary replication technology to replicate at the block level any changed data that may have occurred in between replication jobs. Finally, PlateSpin Protect allows that easy-to-test testing mechanism by simply allowing users to identify the workload backups that are to be tested and powering them on, and that very streamlined one-click failover capability. Now let's take a little bit of a closer look at some of the specific features and benefits of PlateSpin Protect. First of all, the biggest benefit universally of PlateSpin, and one of the core beliefs of Novell, is the belief in a mixed platform data center. And that's something that Jean mentioned at multiple points throughout her presentation. With PlateSpin Protect, we allow you to create a flexible virtual disaster recovery solution, not only for physical servers as well as virtual machine servers, but servers that can be running both Windows as well as Linux, such as SUSE Linux Enterprise from Novell. So again, simplifying the disaster recovery world by allowing one simple platform to protect really the vast majority of server workloads in the data center, both physical and virtual, Windows and Linux. The next core feature of PlateSpin Protect is our simplified testing mechanism. As I've mentioned briefly, with PlateSpin Protect, we allow users to simply identify the server workload backup to be tested and power it on in place. Not only is this a very easy testing mechanism, but looking beyond that ease of use, it also is a very safe testing mechanism, because when we do test the server workload, we in fact take a snapshot copy of that virtual machine backup and, again, leveraging virtualization technology, boot that snapshot copy into a safe, fenced-off virtual network environment. So not only is the testing very easy and available at the click of a mouse, but the testing is in fact very safe in that there is absolutely no interaction with the production backup archive during this test period. One of our core beliefs here at Novell is by streamlining the testing process when it comes to disaster recovery, we allow our users to test, frankly, more often, which drastically reduces the amount of risk that our users need and customers need to incur. And finally, one of the last core benefit of PlateSpin Protect we'll talk about is rapid failover and flexible failback. Again, with traditional backup technologies, failover can be a very painful process, can be very convoluted, and can be very error-prone, again, having to involve multiple steps to take a data backup archive back into a usable workload state. With PlateSpin Protect, by leveraging virtual machines as the backup archive itself, we create an inherently boot-in-place self-contained workload. So again, when a failure occurs or when a server has gone down, a user simply needs to identify the equivalent backup virtual machine copy and power it on directly in place. We actually take that recovery step one step further by also performing all and any of the reconfiguration tasks required so that workload actually not only comes online but has the network characteristics required for it to truly replace the failed original server. Once the disaster has passed, we also include a very unique flexible failback capability with PlateSpin Protect. So once the disaster has in fact passed and perhaps new hardware has been procured to replace the old hardware, with PlateSpin Protect we allow users to take that virtual machine backup archive that has been running in place for a period of time in place of the failed server and stream it back out into the net new physical or virtual machine hardware, effectively performing a virtual to physical or virtual to virtual migration. In the case of a lower-end failure where simply a component had failed, we can actually perform a reverse replication, in fact, simply streaming back any changed data that had occurred within that virtual machine backup. So a great deal of flexibility and a true full life cycle approach to disaster recovery from Novell. And finally, to conclude my session today, as much as I like hearing myself talk, really at the end of the day, the most important people are our own customers. As such, I went into our database of customer success stories and pulled a couple powerful quotes from our customers who are using PlateSpin Protect. For those of you interested, there are some links to the specific case study stories, or simply go to Novell.com and search our customers link for a very large database of customer successes for not only PlateSpin Protect, but also SUSE Linux Enterprise High Availability. One customer that I'll highlight is a customer by the name of Reed Smith, a rather large law firm out of the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. And this quote really highlights the ease of use of PlateSpin Protect and how we streamline and simplify disaster recovery to really make things a little bit easier for IT departments these days who are oftentimes overworked and understaffed and under-resourced. From Reed Smith, had we not had PlateSpin Protect, we would have had no way to recover data for our older servers without maintaining an identical backup server, which is simply unfeasible. With PlateSpin Protect, we can recover multiple sites with the same set of hardware quite easily in a matter of minutes. So again, speaking to the flexibility of our restore process and the ease of use of our product. Another customer that I'll talk about is the South Tahoe Public Utility District. Without PlateSpin in place, we would have really been scrambling, as it could have easily taken 25 to 30 staff hours to get a new server up and running. With PlateSpin, we had the new server up and running within just 3 to 4 hours. Again, really simplifying disaster recovery and the processes associated with it for our IT customers who, again, are trying to do the most with the least amount of resources. And at this point, I will actually... bear with me for a second, a little technical difficulties. From a next step standpoint, I encourage you, we have some links here up on the screen. I encourage you to download an IDC research paper written by my colleague and co-speaker, Gene Bosman. We also offer free trials of almost all of our software here at Novell, including PlateSpin Protect. And we have a link here allowing you to download a free trial of our software if you're interested in running it in-house. And finally, I encourage you to call us in person. Our 800 number is listed there if you do have any questions or would like to learn a little bit more about our solutions, as well as links to our product websites for both PlateSpin Protect, as well as SUSE Linux Enterprise High Availability extension. At this point, I'll throw it back to Joe, and I believe we'll open it up for some Q&A.
We certainly will, and thank you very much, Jason. I appreciate that good, concise overview. Do check out some of the downloads in the software, too. I've seen this in action. It's pretty interesting, and if you haven't seen this before, it's neat. And if you're interested in this kind of thing, it's worth a little bit of your time. We've got bunches of good questions in. If you haven't sent your question in yet, you can still do so. And even if you don't get an answer on the webcast here, we'll make sure that you get a prompt email response from one or more of our guests afterwards. So don't be shy. We're all still figuring this out, so there's no such thing as a dumb question. So let's dive in. So this first one looks like it is for Gene Bosman from IDC. Gene, you mentioned the high availability spectrum and the need to take inventory of the workloads to be protected. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yes, I could.
Well, please do.
We mentioned that the data center is a place that has a lot of different workloads running, different characteristics and expectations around those different workloads, whether it be email or business processing, transaction processing, and so on. Traditionally, transaction processing was the one that originally people focused on to make sure that it was highly available. You think of banking and so on. You got to make sure that that's running. But nowadays, when we run these studies, we find that people are feeling very, very much that email has become mission critical and other things like that in the old days would not have been considered that way. But each workload may have its own set of parameters or level of agreements with the business unit that depends upon that application. And in some cases, you can see where downtime of a minute or so may not be mission critical, or it could be absorbed by the organization. We did ask in some of our surveys, well, when do you start to get worried? And certainly, if it goes to an hour or more, you've got a real problem on your hands. But, there are degrees of concern, and that's where the planning process and the evaluation process comes in. Which workloads do I have? What are my concern levels? What's going to be the level that I'm going to aim for with my high availability plan? And if something happens, how will I recover from it and do something about it? And it's going to vary from organization to organization, and very individualized planning is required.
I think the universal answer to when you start worrying is when your boss calls up and screams.
That would be a sign.
That would be one sign.
Very true.
Jay, here's a good question for you. Given the demand being placed on system administrators, what types of automation are built into Novell products that make them easy to work with and simplify administrative tasks?
Well, and when it comes to PlateSpin Protect, really, we very much have the user in mind when it comes to all of our capabilities and our software. So from a user experience standpoint, we leverage, perhaps an overused buzzword these days, but a Web 2.0 type of interface. So that from a disaster recovery standpoint, what we've really sought to do from the ground up with the development of the product is to take the complexities associated with systems management, specifically disaster recovery management, and streamline it into an experience as easy as surfing your Facebook page, if you will. From a capability standpoint, we not only include that simple streamlined web interface, but we also do things like email push alerting for any monitoring alerts that may happen, or worst case scenario, a failure alert that can happen, allowing users not only to keep track of what's happening on the go or on the road, but also by leveraging the web-based interface and web technologies, we also allow users to in fact interact with the product on the road as well through that mobile device. So from a user standpoint, we take a lot of complexities. We automate tasks like configuration and reconfiguration of those virtual machines. From a nuts and bolts standpoint, streamlining and automating perhaps the most difficult tasks. And from a user experience standpoint, just making the experience very easy and intuitive, so that at the time of high stress, which would be a time of disaster, there really is nothing to worry about in terms of what do I do and how do I use this product.
Got an interesting question here about how custom applications are protected, and if that's different with the Novell products. Well, actually, let's say that in general, but specifically with the Novell products, is that different from how packaged applications are protected?
Who wants to answer that question?
Who wants to take? How about Doug? I think that's a good one for Doug.
I'll take that, and then Gene, you can follow up. As it relates to SUSE Linux Enterprise high availability extension, oftentimes we will have the resource agent for many third-party package applications available, so it will slide right into the HA platform. For custom applications, however, you'll need to develop a custom resource agent. The minimal one is a LSB conform start-stop status script. So, for custom applications, you'll need to turn to the tools that we provide within the solution in order to ensure protection of that application. Gene, did you want to follow up on that?
Oh, just I think that what Doug's talking about is that when you have packaged applications, in many cases the provider can provide all that you need for it to do the automatic failover, and with custom, these were traditionally a little bit harder to support, but it looks like they have made provisions for that. I think that the overall general idea is that you want to take more pressure off of the individual practitioner when a disaster takes place, and because those custom apps are one-off, there is need to, especially when you're doing that inventory, to take account of that, to flag those and make sure that they're properly protected as well as the big database and application products that are widely known and you know that those are going to plug in easily to any to any solution that you're putting in place. So that would be the distinction.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Here's another one let's give this to Jason. How can workloads fail over to virtual machines provide new options for Linux high availability? What about working with mixed physical and virtuals in the infrastructure?
Well, again, that question really speaks to perhaps one of the biggest challenges in the data center today, and that's the reality of a mixed platform data center. So data centers today include not only physical servers from the past, perhaps, or also new ones, but more increasingly we see a lot of virtual machine adoption. With this mixed platform infrastructure, management becomes, a bottleneck at some points. With disaster recovery, virtualization inherently, because of the flexibility of virtual machines, allows a multi-platform heterogeneous type of management to emerge. With disaster recovery, by leveraging virtual machines created by a product, perhaps like PlateSpin Protect, we greatly streamline and simplify the ability to manage disaster recovery with one simple solution. When it comes to virtual machines themselves, inherently they are lower cost and more flexible and easier to manage than traditional physical servers. So with disaster recovery and Linux workloads in particular, we open up a lot of new possibilities with this type of technology.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's keep on that. Gene Bosman, there's a question here for you, and we've already talked about part of this, but how is providing high availability different in a virtualized environment versus a non-virtualized environment?
Yeah.
So we've kind of lapped around the edges of this, but anything new to add to that discussion?
Right. Well, I think the pieces about leveraging VMs and seeing what one can do VMs, virtual machines, the ability to clone those. Certainly we have failover, and that's very well established as a high availability type of approach. But as well, if we can wake up VMs that have our application somewhere else, and then combine that with production data that's been replicated elsewhere, if we have those two ingredients, we can start up again, and it's a little bit different than because we're using the VMs than the traditional failover. That's just an additional tool beyond what we have in failover clustering. So what I was trying to get at, and again with the HA spectrum discussion, is that now with virtualization there are different ways to approach how we might achieve high availability depending on what our preferences are, what our skill sets are, what our comfort levels are, and so on and so forth. But there are new ways to do it and scale out infrastructure, and it's pretty exciting that, there continues to be this innovation in what, was a very old practice of, maintaining high availability in the data center, and new ways to do it now.
I'm going to toss out the last question. We're running down the clock pretty quickly, but a quickie answer. Jason, let's go to you because I think this is in your purview. What's the importance of combining HA solutions with data replication? How are these processes coordinated with Novell products? And Doug, if you want to dive into that, you can too. But let's close out there.
Sure. With PlateSpin Protect in particular, one of the things that we recognize throughout, actually, one of the themes of today's session was, the need for multiple solutions for different types of workload profiles. With PlateSpin Protect, not only do we have a canned, interesting solution and capability set, but we also open up an API for customers that want to, frankly, integrate PlateSpin into additional infrastructure that may be in place for disaster recovery. Very common integration that we see with users is leveraging PlateSpin Protect to create flexible virtual machines as backups for operating systems and applications, or perhaps system layers of workloads, if you want to think of it that way, in conjunction with disk-based replication technology, something like SAN replication, to kind of create a best-of-breed type of disaster recovery solution for some perhaps more mid-tier server workloads. So by opening up our capabilities and allowing us to better integrate into perhaps existing technologies in the disaster recovery realm, we truly are looking for our customers to complete their disaster recovery architecture with our products.
Well said. Let's leave it at that. That's about all the time we have today. I'd like to thank our guest, Doug Jarvis, Product Marketing Manager for Enterprise Linux Servers at Novell, Jason Day, Product Marketing Manager at Novell, and Gene Bosman, Research Vice President for Enterprise Servers at IDC. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Novell, for bringing us all together, and especially to you all for tuning in. We know everybody's busy. Hopefully this time was worth your while and helps move you down the road a bit in your decision-making process. before you sign out, if you haven't done so, consider downloading the presentations. Lots of good stuff there. There's some other resources that we mentioned and links that can take you deeper into both the customer side and the technical side. And there's a special focus on well, we'll leave it at that. There's special focus on lots of things there. So go and download and play around and see what you got there. Good stuff all the way around. Before you sign off, be sure to take the optional survey I mentioned so we can continue to provide you with the highest quality online webcasts and events. And if you'd like to refer back to today's presentation, a full recorded version with the PowerPoints and the audio will be available the next day or so for the next 6 months at the same site where you signed up for this, and that is eseminarslive.com. That's eseminarslive.com. And for information about upcoming e-seminars, you can visit the same site to see bunches of other good programs coming up. The audio program will now come to an end, so I'm Joe Miglita, and thank you for joining us today, and have a great rest of the day.